the 5th of November. I'll just make a comment, Steve. Thank you very much for your update. Perhaps we could get you to repeat it under Prosperous Napier with all those wonderful financial...
Word for word.
No apologies. Any conflicts of interest? None. No public forum. Announcements by the Mayor? No. Announcements by myself. I've already made my short announcement, but are there any other minor matters that people would like to put on the agenda for discussion? No. Announcements by management? I think they're done. Confirmation of minutes of the Prosperous Napier Committee held on Thursday the 24th of September 2020 to be taken as a true and accurate record. Could I have someone to move that? Councillor McGrath, second. Councillor Price. All those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We have one item on this open agenda. Item 1, the lease of reserve land for Napier City Rovers Association Football Club at Park Island. Brian will speak briefly to this.
Morning. So this item just seeks approval pursuant to the Reserves Act for Council to approve a new lease to the Napier City Rovers Football Club for the footprint of their clubhouse and grandstand and buildings at Park Island. So it's proposed a 15-year lease with one right of renewal of 15 years. And this lease replaces a very old lease that was drafted some 30 years ago, and we're just trying to clarify sort of roles and responsibilities, I suppose, in terms of that site. So the lease simply provides occupation for the footprint of the clubhouse and the grandstand. That's owned by the club, and they have responsibility for that. In terms of the playing field, that is quite specific, that remains under the control of Napier City Council in terms of booking, and Napier City Council has always maintained that playing field. So the new lease just clarifies some of these grey areas that have existed in the past, and the club has agreed to those terms of the new lease. So happy to answer any questions.
Just first of all, Councillor Simpson, just in relation to the council will give preference to such requests, and unless the council considers it not to be in the best interest of, there's obviously been some discussion over the use of the field.
Yes.
And there's been conflict in the past.
Yes, I guess there was a view that Napier City Rovers had exclusive use of that field, but there are now other soccer entities and clubs and organisations that use that field. So recognising the history behind City Rovers and their occupation, we've arrived at an agreement where that they do have preference to that, but if council considers it's in the best interest of the game to allow others to have the use of that, then that council has that right. And if there is any disputes, it goes to the Chief Executive of Napier City Council, and his or her decision shall be final. And the club's agreed to that.
So that was going to be my final question. That particular part has been discussed with the football entities who may have conflict.
Yes, it's been going on for quite some time.
I think there's a few of us aware of that. Councillor McGrath, sorry.
Sorry, just to clarify, so it's only football codes that can use the field, or is it other codes potentially in the future, or other events on that ground?
Yeah, that's at the discretion of council. No, it doesn't have to be only football, soccer. No, but I think that is the premier ground for that particular sport, football, soccer. So obviously, football, soccer would be given preference, but no, there's nothing legally to stop it being used for any other purpose. But it is a recreation reserve, so we would have to bear in mind it is a recreation reserve.
Councillor Simpson, and then
Through you, Mr Chair, just a couple of questions. You've solved some of my thoughts. But first question was around the maintenance of the park. Is this a shift in responsibilities around the maintenance of the green area and the wider
No,
space?
the actual playing field has, since day one, 30 plus years ago, has always been the responsibility of Napier City Council. So Napier City Council funds that, and the users obviously pay through the fees and charges schedule for the use of that ground.
And
So there's no change there.
Yep. And the second query was around the wording around the, if council rent the park to another user, it talks about the club rooms being available to the other users, but I assume that would be a separate hire directly through the
Yeah,
Rovers
that's
club.
right. That's between the hirer and the club. But it's our expectation that, well, particularly what we're really talking about is the changing rooms and the
Yeah.
public toilets, that they've been made available to other users. But unfortunately, they're all part of the one structure, so
So
we
who
can't sort of separate those out as
who
council ownership.
maintains those toilets?
The club,
Okay.
changing rooms and toilets.
So it would be appropriate for them to charge a hireage if somebody
Yes.
wanted those facilities? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Crystal.
Similar to what Councillor Simpson was asking about the club rooms, but also the grandstand. Do they get use of, if another club uses it, of the grandstand, if that's owned by the...
That's the expectation in the lease, yes, that
Okay.
another user would have access to the grandstand and the changing rooms
Yeah.
and the public toilets, part of that building.
And just another question, how long ago did the lease expire?
It's been rolling over on a month-by-month basis for approximately 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Any further questions? Councillor Mawson.
Through the chair, just one question. Are there any other codes that have to rent their, like for instance rugby, do they have to rent their space to play?
Yes, in general with the sports clubs, just excluding bowling clubs and the hockey turf, in general the sporting groups, they own their own clubhouse and they lease the ground off council. And with rugby, the rugby's played mainly on the Park Island on the Tremaine field. I mean, there are various rugby grounds throughout Napier, but if we just take Napier Marist Old Boys, for instance, at Park Island, they own their clubhouse. They lease that ground that the clubhouse sits on off council. And then the Tremaine field and all the fields are controlled by council, and the rugby union has to obviously book the use of those through council. So in answer to your question, no, in general the sporting codes don't own their own fields except for the bowling club. They're different obviously. Yeah, it's an enclosure, and the hockey turf over the way.
Thank you, Brian.
Councillor Brown.
Kia ora, Brian. I'm just interested to know what the sort of proportion of external or clubs other than the Rovers using the land is currently, and whether that's projected to stay the same or increase.
Off the top of my head, I couldn't give you that proportion. I think over the last 30 years, there's been other soccer entities that have been formed and what have you. So I guess historically that use by other parties has increased. But I would imagine the majority would be Napier City Rovers, definitely. But I can't give you an exact proportion.
I suppose I was just wondering whether this was a point of conflict which was potentially going to escalate, or whether it was at its peak now. But
Probably at its peak, I would imagine. Yeah.
One would hope that this discussion that has taken place will now preclude any further conflicts, as long as the parties have been involved in the decision making. Yeah. So, good. Do I have any other questions? Have someone prepared to move the resolution that we resolve pursuant to section 54(1)(b) of the Reserved Act 1977 to grant a lease to Napier City Rovers Association Football Club Incorporated for an area of land at Park Island Reserve occupied by the club's clubhouse, changing rooms and grandstand, and that the term of the lease be for a period of 15 years with one right of renewal. Councillor Simpson, Councillor Crown. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, do you want to speak to that?
Well, only to say, I think it's very helpful to have this finalised and to have very clear set of engagement rules around the use of the park and access to the facilities on the park, and I think that will resolve some of the current conflicts and make life a lot easier for both the users and administrators.
Thank you. Councillor Crown.
Yeah, absolutely agree with Councillor Simpson, and just great to see some resolution around this.
Any other comment? Anybody like to speak? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? No? Carried. Thank you. No minor matters. Would someone like to move we move into public excluded? Councillor Mawson, Councillor Tarpany. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Right.